Hello, Pagan Pages readers. Welcome to this month's edition of Magical Arts. My name's Robin Fennelly, and we are going to be starting a new series entitled Meditation for the Magickal Practitioner. This is a subject that is near and dear to my heart. It's a place where there's a fusion between Eastern practice and Western hermetics. So we're going to begin taking a look at some of those overlays that we can use from what we know of Eastern meditation practices and apply them in very specific ways in using different symbols and using the different ways in which we work with our magic, and forming together a very sustainable practice that will encourage you to really take a moment to breathe, to pause before you actually start to weave your magic. So let me take us to the first slides that we're going to be looking at today, and this material. So Meditation for Pagan Practitioners, Part 1. What I wanted to do was talk a little bit in this edition about the great philosophies of meditation. This is the place where East meets West. Now, mindfulness practice is almost a buzzword these days, and unlike it used to be, even I would say 10 years ago, where meditation was not so much folded into the practices of hermetic disciplines in the same way that it is now. Many of these principles that we can draw from these Eastern practices are actually those things that have to some degree been around for a long time with our pagan practices. They just weren't called some of these things. So some of the great philosophies of meditation, the Buddhist tradition, its goal mainly is self-enlightenment. It is a spiritual turning inwards. So the meditation, the techniques, they are much more reflective and self-contemplative than it being experiences where you are engaging and working with the world that surrounds you. It's more a matter of turning inwards. The Taoist is influenced by the Buddhist traditions, but its focus is more on nature, outward, and to connect with natural energy. So I guess in a lot of ways you could almost say that the Taoist meditation practices are somewhere a little closer to how we as witches and pagans would use the contemplative work to inform what we do. Sufism comes into play when we see the whirling dervishes. It's more of a trance-induced meditative state. It is very much based in movement. So here we now have an overlay of the energetic components. Hinduism incorporates mantras that are directed at specific deity and devotion. The mantras are repetitive, they are chant-like, they are used in very specific ways to connect you to those specific deities. Again, very much like what we do with our chants when we are working ritual or we're trying to connect with a certain deity. And then the Western synthesis of these things. So we incorporate sound, which could be drumming or chanting or listening to music. We incorporate something that is similar to a mandala, which in the Eastern practice, it's essentially geometric patterns that are meant in a specific way to open up the space of consciousness. You could consider our mandalas to be the scribing of a pentagram or the glyphs of the astrological planets or whatever it is in that way. Excuse me. We use guided meditations often to connect us more deeply with a working or a deity that we are working with. Transcendental meditation was very popular, as was biorhythms couple decades ago, where that first crossover between the Eastern and the Western synthesis of meditation came into being. The biorhythms was really interesting because it literally looked and categorized and codified the various states that we move through. And we move through these states when we're asleep, when we're going to sleep, when we're doing sacred work, when we are spell crafting, when we are calling the quarters, the delta, the theta, the beta, the alpha. That was all incorporated into the study and the thought of biorhythms and how we could adjust consciousness. And let's be frank here, when we're talking about these things, meditation, contemplative action, we're actually striving to change our space of consciousness. Zazen, or seated meditation, is something that is prevalent in the Zen Buddhist meditation technique. It involves specific physical positions. You will often find that, and this is true in many of the practices, I teach this as well, when I am working with specific energetic protocols, the idea of keeping the spine erect, the idea of resting and settling into your physical space, but then also lifting up and out of that space as well. The cosmic mudra, and this is the pointer or index finger and the thumb coming together, and then the rest of the fingers extended out. And I know you've seen that many times, probably in images of people in meditation, and the backs of the hands are generally resting somewhere around the tops of the thighs. The idea actually of this closing of the fingers, the pointer and the thumb, is actually one that is to induce the energetic flow and the energetic pathways to recycle within the body versus open-handed and allowing the energy to move out and away from you. Mudras are hand positions, specific hand positions that are used in specific types of meditative practice, and each of the mudras has a specific meaning. And we might talk about that in future a little bit later. There's also a component of focused concentration. So this might look like counting the breath. It might be after or as you're counting your breath or paying attention to your breath, you begin to move energy through your body. It's a returning to a place of stillness, and then it's also moving through what I like to call the twin gates, meaning that you're hovering somewhere between a consciousness and awareness that is housed within your physical body, but you've also moved into another gate or another realm where your consciousness is allowed to move freely, and you are either in a contemplative state where you are possibly meeting a deity in a temple, seeking advice, seeking wisdom, just allowing thoughts to pass through you, whatever that looks like. It's that transition from that place of being completely physically aware of my body sitting in a space into a place of allowing myself the liberation of moving more freely with my consciousness. Another component is devotion and reflection. So when we are working with meditation, are we seeking deity? Are we using a path working? Are we using a guided visualization? So these are some of the techniques and some of the ways in which we can engage ourselves in a contemplative and reflective meditative state, and also have it perform double duty, meaning that it's not just about simply relieving stress and just sitting quietly and still. Perhaps we're using it as a way to allow our consciousness to rise up into the transpersonal chakra, allow it to rise up, to meet and to speak with and to offer devotion to deity. Or we may be listening to a specific path working that is taking us and opening up keys within our subtle bodies and within our subtle beings for work that needs to be done. Or we're following a guided visualization, which is more direct in where we are going, what it is taking you, and how it is asking you to respond and react to what it is that is coming into your consciousness. This focuses the attention in order to still the mind and allow a greater awareness and clarity to emerge. So when we enter into these states, we have what's called a spiritual concentrative, meaning that there may be some object or something that we are focusing on. A very easy and quick example that I'm sure everyone can relate to is using a candle flame to stare into, using it as a technique for developing your visualization skills, using it as a place to place your awareness in, perhaps for the work that you're doing. Movement and drumming is another tool that you can use as well. This particularly for the contemplative that is more of a journeying state. So you use the drumming. This is done frequently in shamanistic work. The drumming carries the consciousness of the individual, and for all intents and purposes, you are in a contemplative state as your consciousness is riding the waves, riding the vibration, riding the sound of the drumming and or movement. And that goes back to what I mentioned about the whirling dervishes, where the concentration is actually placed in the palm of the hand, which helps to, as they are spinning, helps to keep the practitioner from getting dizzy. So you actually focus on the palm of your hand. That's a little dance technique there. Engaging the sensorial or engaging the overt senses. These are done through mandalas, the images, the visualization of something that is a geometric pattern that moves your conscious awareness into a different state of being. Mudras, the placement of the hands, the different positions that the hands may take as you are doing some sort of a reflective contemplation. Sometimes you might see this particular mudra. The person or the individual might actually have it at the space of their solar plexus. Chants and mantras. Chants in that the repetition of the sound, the words that are being spoken, and mantras which are similar to chants, but often with the mantras, there's not so much of a song, kind of a folk telling, as you find often in some of the chants that are used in a pagan practice. The mantras are more focused on maybe 1 or 2 or 3 lines that are just repeated and repeated and repeated with a specific rhythm, with a specific tone for a set number of times. And then of course there's trance. So these are altered state induced spaces of consciousnness that often are, I want to say provoked, but that's probably not the correct word to use, are stimulated through chants or through movements. And trance work, or this altering state, is done purposefully. It's purposefully done to enable a shifting of consciousness elsewhere, so that you are taken outside of your physical state of being, and instead your consciousness is moved into another state of awareness. So a state of being aware of inner and the outer environment. There is spiritual mindfulness, which is in an active way becoming the observer, acknowledging emotions, breath, thoughts, etc. And then there's passive mindfulness, where you do nothing. The mind is simply neutral. And both of these types of mindfulness, as I said, they're very prevalent now. You hear that in a variety of different ways. You know, there are benefits and there are detriments to everything that we do. The benefits of mindfulness and incorporating that into a contemplative practice is that it trains you, and I'm sure there will be some who may not agree with this. This is just my opinion, but I believe that it helps to train you almost to multitask, because we are generally unable to push from our mind and push from our thought and push from our consciousness all of the thoughts that wish to have our attention. And as I'm sure many will attest, as soon as you sit down and you set the intention of being mindful about something, or even just set the intention of wanting to sit in a meditation, everything seems to be knocking at your door. You know, you get itchy maybe, or you suddenly hear the lawnmower that's running, you know, 6 houses away from you, or you're suddenly uncomfortable, or you have to cough, or you have to sneeze, or a multitude of thoughts come crashing in around you, and all you want to do is just, or all you're told to do, is to just kind of push them aside. So when we actually use mindfulness, I believe it's a way of training us to be able to multitask, so that those thoughts, the more that we work with this, the more that we do this, those thoughts just become a wispy background. It's not that we are obliterating them, but they become just wispy shadows in the background that we can then, we're aware, but we can focus all of our attention on whatever it is that we're hoping to accomplish in that contemplative session. This is also something that is very, very handy, especially if you are called to uphold a ritual, or called to create sacred space, or called to do a working within a ritual space, whether it's for a group or for yourself. You have to be able to actually be aware in the background of things that are occurring, so that you can make the adjustments and the modifications at a subtle and etheric level that are necessary to accomplish the work at hand. So spiritual mindfulness, taking it from the approach of an active engagement, learning to become the observer. So you're acknowledging all of the emotions, all of the breath, all of the thoughts, anything that come into your purview. And then shifting into that passive state, where you realize that you can acknowledge these things, but there's nothing that you need to do about them. These are possibly things that you don't need to take up right now. So the mind becomes neutral. It is neither active in trying to brush away all of these thoughts or intrusions, nor trying to bring all of them in and get rid of them as quickly as you can. It's just in a neutral space. So using those two areas within a mindfulness approach to the work that you are doing in trying to develop yourself and create a sustainable and also an enriching meditation practice. Being mindful that you shift, and you can shift from that active into that passive state of being. So I wanted to give this overview for our first part of this, just so that, and I know I threw a lot at you, and I'm throwing it at you in a very quick way, but I wanted you to just have the tip of the iceberg. We're going to talk a little bit more about some of these things that I've interjected here, and we are definitely going to learn how to make use of these principles, and then also some other things that I'm going to share with you in our own personal practice on the spiritual path that we have chosen. But I think it's really important that you have just a little taste of, you know, what is comprising a meditation practice, and what that can look like for you. So the last thing that I actually want to do for you is a very, very brief, this won't be terribly long, a very brief experiential. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to take you into the stillness of the elements, and you're just going to have a very small taste of a contemplative practice. And I'll probably do something a little bit similar to this or more the next month when we have our part 2. So what I'd like you to do now is to just simply, wherever you are, it doesn't matter where you are, this won't take very long, and this is also to show you that you can enter into this state regardless of where you are. Obviously, if you are driving a vehicle or you are operating equipment or anything like that, you need to stop this video now, and I don't want you to do the meditation piece of this. But if you're in a safe space and you can give a few moments of your time, then I just want you to take a few nice deep breaths. And I want you to actually keep your eyes open. Very often we are told to close our eyes for work that we need to do that is more reflective. I don't want you to do that. You have to learn how to be able to do this work fully conscious, fully aware, and engaged. And so that is what the point of me asking you to keep your eyes open is with this exercise. So I want you to take a few deep breaths now. And as you breathe in, I want you to make note of the air passing into your lungs, the expansion of your lungs, the filling of your lungs. And I want you to also acknowledge the exhalation, the collapsing, the contracting of your lungs as air passes naturally and comfortably. And take a few more breaths in this manner, just establishing whatever rhythm of breathing is comfortable for you at this particular point in time. Now as you're breathing, I want you to look around, and I want you to call into your being all of those things that you associate with the element of air. Anything that you might see, if you're outside, you might see some leaves blowing. If you're inside, you can just simply bring your awareness back to your breath. That is air after all. And I want you to just call through your space of consciousness everything that you associate with air. And allow all of those things to just move around you with your eyes open and envisioning the air that resides in everything that is surrounding you and what you're seeing. Now I want you to call your attention to those things that you know of fire. All the various definitions that you have for fire as an element. And as you're looking around, I want you to pay particular attention to those things that are of fire, of that fire element. Those things that are surrounding you, those things that immediately make you think of the element of fire. And now I want you to call into your space of consciousness all of those things that you consider to be of the element of water. Anything that you define as water, whatever is surrounding you that is of the water element, I want you to call those things into your space of being. And now I want you to call into the space of your consciousness all of those things that are considered to be of earth. All that you consider of the earth element. Anything that is surrounding you, anything that is within you and without you, that you consider to be of earth. And now as you bring awareness to all four of those elements, air, fire, water, and earth, I want you to inhale. And as you're inhaling, I want you to see all of those things coming into you as the space of spirit, all components of what is spirit within you. And as you exhale out, I want you to imagine all of those things being transformed and the aether coming out and from you and informing and engaging, weaving its way through what surrounds you. Pull all of those things together and do this for just a couple breaths, drawing all of the elements into a place of spirit and exhaling out that spirit that fills you. Take one more deep breath in, hold it. And as you exhale this time, I want you to imagine all of those elements reaching in and out into all the extremes of your body, into your extremities, filling you, renewing you, and making you more aware. And as you move forward in your day, or if this is at evening time, as you move forward into your dream world, I want you to just give one space of thought to the few minutes that we used in doing this exercise. And I think you will be surprised at the fact that all of this will come into your being and you will remember how this felt. So for next month, we're going to continue our study, part 2 of this exploration. I'm not giving an end to when or how many parts this is going to be. I'm just going to kind of play with it and see what seems and feels right and appropriate. So I hope you enjoyed this video version of Magickal Arts. I hope you enjoyed the work that we're beginning. And again, I'm Robin Fennelly for Pagan Pages. I hope you enjoy our e-zine and be safe, stay well, and I will see you next month. Bye, and blessed be everyone.